All right. So interpretable machine learning models for phase prediction and polymerization-induced self-assembly. Oh, that's a long title. And polymerization-induced self-assembly. So that's an example of a problem in materials or polymer chemistry, and it's quite fascinating of a process. So you have a polymerization process that starts in a solution, and under some conditions, the polymer chains, they will self-assemble into a bunch of interesting or useful nano-objects. So that's a super complicated process because you have the chemical interactions of the bond forming. At the same time, you have the kinetic process of the nanoparticles assembling. So there's no method on Earth that can simulate that process from first principles, which is why there's lots of experimentation going on if nano-objects of a specific application have to be produced. They are, for instance, useful in drug delivery and in fabric that should be fireproof as application examples. So the vision is to use machine learning to predict under what experimental conditions what nano-objects will form. But since the project is so complicated, there's very little training data available, which is why we attack the problem with interpretable models like rule ensembles you see on the upper right. And so we've done this with our collaborators in the CSIRO. So we have the polymer chemistry experts there. And we were able to interrogate the models and see that they indeed capture the right chemical intuition. And you can actually have quite some accurate prediction, which is enough to do the phase prediction as you see on the lower right. This is a computer-generated phase diagram out of the rule ensemble model. Okay, thank you very much.
This was presented at AAAI 22. And it was done in collaboration with a couple of colleagues. Peter is here. And Peter was kind enough to advertise so boldly Formalex AI. Thank you, Peter. So this work was done in that setting. In that specific work, we were interested in explaining gradient-boosted trees, namely those produced by the XGBoost tool, a very popular tool. So what we computed is called abductive formal explanations. Basically, an explanation defined this way is a subset of features in the standard classification scenario that are deemed responsible for the prediction, right? So it's a subset of features that we know is sufficient for the prediction to hold, right? And to compute these kind of explanations, we have to formally reason about the logical representation of the model. So in the case of boosted trees, it's perfectly fine to represent them in one of the decidable fragments of first-order logic, and we can use an SMT satisfiability modular theory solver to make queries and decide which features are important for the prediction. But as Peter mentioned, one of the major scalability issues with our approach is scalability, because it's difficult to reason about large models. And this is what this paper tried to address. So basically, instead of considering a rich logic satisfiability modular theory over linear arithmetic over integers and reals, we considered a propositional reasoner that answers optimization queries instead of decision queries. And of course, the devil is in the detail, so we propose lots of different optimizations to the approach, and in the end, we showed that this approach is a couple of orders of magnitude faster than SMT, and we were able to also beat Anchor, which is one of the well-known heuristic explainers. That's it. If you're interested, please come to the poster. I will be happy to talk to you.
Thank you very much. It's going to be GNFA twice, straight one after another. So you've got 2 minutes for the first one and 2 minutes for the second.
Okay, GNFA twice here. Okay, so I have 4 minutes. So we all know this ChatGPT and GPT-4 actually is leading the new wave of new run of AI wave here. So behind this large model, they all use this kind of transformer backbone there. So this NeurIPS Spotlight paper is about how to train and run this transformer efficiently, right? So basically, we are dealing with this kind of efficient issues there. So we come out such a very simple model there. Actually, is borrowing the idea from signal processing, right? So here we are dealing with image data there. We know image data, it contains low frequency components there, high frequency components there. And then in transformer, there's a fundamental component there called self-attention. So essentially, it's just a process try to capture the correlations among all those input tokens there. So the question at that time we ask is whether we need to do this kind of self-attention for all the input tokens there, right? Because for image data, for low frequency information, you have that kind of long-term dependency there. So it makes sense to do global attention. But for those kind of high-frequency components, actually they are quite local. Actually, we don't need to do such a global attention there. So this is the basic idea there. So what we implement here, so my PhD student, this Zhi Zhen, co-supervised with Bo Han, so we come out such a nice framework there. So the question here is we do it in such a frequency domain, but frequency domain will also introduce additional complexity there. You also need to do FFT, inverse FFT there. So Zhi Zhen come out such a framework, we can avoid such a dilemma there. We can still enjoy this kind of frequency domain analysis, but we don't need to do FFT and IFFT there. So if you want to figure out, if you want to find out how we did this, okay, come to the poster, talk to Zhi Zhen. Yeah, he is the real expert. Yeah. Okay, so the second talk actually is a different thing. It's about 3D there, right? So we know these days this generative model actually is a very hot topic there. But all those applications are mainly at 2D in the text domain, generate new sentence, generate new image there. What about 3D, right? So these days, in the past 2 or 3 years, actually there's also a big breakthrough in this 3D space. So actually that is this nerve called neural radiance field. It essentially actually introduces a new representation for this 3D. We can represent 3D in not just volume, not just mesh, not just point cloud, but such a nerve as a neural radiance field, such an implicit neural representation there. And then this kind of representation is very powerful. If you look at this early ECCV 20 paper, that is that won this best paper award at that conference, right? So given a bunch of 100 images, capture the scene from different views there. And then they can kind of doing such a high resolution reconstruction there, getting such a 3D, right, on the top right there, with very high quality. So actually it stunned the entire 3D community there. Okay. So in this work, what we did is we introduced such an object concept there, right? Existing nerve work that mainly actually reconstruct the entire scene there as one thing, as one object there. But for real things, there are many objects there. There are many people there. Actually, our world is a compositional world there, right? Containing many objects there. So essentially, we are dealing with the problem, how can we introduce such a compositional object, compositional concept into such a neural implicit representation? So we have a very simple framework. We also use the same set of image, just with some semantic mask there. Then we can reconstruct both the entire scene as well as individual objects there. So if you want to find out how we did this, come to our poster. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Chuang, a third-year PhD student supervised by Professor Dian Fei. I'm happy to introduce our work on domain-generalizable object detection. Performing object detection in real world remains challenging due to the complexity and the diversity of natural science. Taking autonomous driving as an example, you may encounter the situation like fog, day and night, or different types of roads like highways, small road, and lines. In our work, it's hard to train a generalizable object detector to deal with such a diverse situation. You may inquire to collecting a large amount of data, which is highly expensive in a real-world scenario. And in our work, we do a generalizable object detection, which focus on do not rely on target domain and focus on learning from multiple sources. When target data is not available, you can't directly matching the multiple source data because it's insufficient to learn a well-aligned feature space for target domain. And in our approach, we try to extract the domain independent object feature first. When we have the image content, we can learn a shared feature space for the target domain. And in our work, we use image instruction with domain adversary training to learn the disentangled image content. And thank you. See you at poster.